Hey guys, tonight we venture deep into the whispering woods of Germany's Black Forest, a place where trees lean in just a little too close, paths vanish behind you, and the silence somehow feels like it's listening. You'll be walking the footprints of those who came here hoping for peace, maybe just a break from the real world, but ended up vanishing into the moss-covered silence. The forest has a way of swallowing things, whole backpacks, compasses, people. No joke, you probably won't survive this one. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time down in the comments. I always love seeing how far these stories reach. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through soft, damp earth as dusk begins to pull its navy blanket over the sky. The Black Forest, Schwarzwald, as the locals call it, sprawls across southwestern Germany like a forgotten dream. Everything smells like wet pine and old secrets. This isn't a place designed for comfort. It's a place that expects you to keep moving. Birds go silent faster than they should. Your breath fogs even though the air isn't cold. Something doesn't want you here. This is the same forest that gave us the original Grimm fairy tales, if that tells you anything. Hansel and Gretel? Yeah, not exactly the feel-good story we pretend it is. People lost in the woods, stalked by something just human enough to be terrifying. That might as well be the region's motto. But tonight, you're not chasing breadcrumbs. You're following a trail of cold cases that go back over 50 years. You pause by an old wooden sign, half-rotted and covered in moss. The name of the trail has faded, but it once marked the boundary between two counties, Baden and Württemberg. Locals call this area Totenwinkel, which roughly means dead man's corner. Totally normal, right? A breeze rustles the branches, and the trees shift with a creaking sigh that feels aware. This is where the first known disappearance happened in 1972. A teacher named Gerd Hinrichs set out on a weekend hike and never returned. His map was found folded neatly in his parked car, along with his packed lunch, untouched. People said he must have gotten lost, but that didn't explain why his footprints just stopped in a clearing, like he was lifted off the ground. The forest doesn't advertise its secrets. You've got to earn them. Every few kilometers, there's a marker, sometimes a wooden cross, sometimes a stone pile that doesn't show up on any official hiking maps. If you ask the locals, they'll shrug and say, "Old memorials," before quickly changing the subject. It's like they don't want you asking questions, which, let's be honest, only makes you want to ask more. You press on. Somewhere up ahead, a faint chime echoes like a bell. You freeze. There are no churches nearby, at least, none still standing. But then the sound vanishes, like it was never there. That's the thing out here. You start questioning your own senses. The forest plays games, and it's been doing it for a long time. In fact, historical records from the 17th century mention entire logging teams that went missing. There's one account written by a monk in 1643 that describes black fogs and hollow laughter in the trees. Sounds like someone had a flair for drama, sure, but 3 different logging families left the region that year and never came back. Some modern scholars still argue whether these stories are folklore or distorted fact, but the sheer volume of similar patterns groups entering the forest, then never being seen again, makes you wonder. What's consistent is the silence. The way communication devices fail, the sudden weather shifts, and that creeping feeling right between your shoulder blades that you're not alone. Now your path narrows. You duck beneath low-hanging branches, brushing spiderwebs from your face. The air gets thicker, like you're wading through invisible syrup. The smell changes too, less pine now, more damp stone and iron. Maybe a stream nearby? Maybe not. You pass a gnarled tree with a single red ribbon tied around its trunk. Fresh. Too fresh. You're definitely not the only one who's come through here recently. You keep walking, because what else can you do? It's around now that your flashlight starts flickering. Of course it does. The batteries were new still are, probably. But you tap the casing anyway, as if that ever helps. Just as the beam steadies, you spot something ahead. A marker stone, barely poking out from a thicket of weeds. You clear the brush and read the inscription, "Für die nicht zurückkehrten." For those who did not return, the stone is newer than the others, maybe 10, 15 years old. Someone is still keeping track, someone is still remembering, and maybe someone is still watching. The wind picks up again, and the forest sighs like it's settling in for a long night. You tighten your jacket, but you're not cold. You're alert, prickling with a kind of ancestral dread. The kind of fear that doesn't shout, it whispers, and it's whispering now. The trail dips, and with it, your confidence. The forest feels denser now, not just in trees, but in something you can't quite name. You step carefully, your boots sinking into soft ground that's wetter than before. Somewhere to your left, you hear a twig snap. A deer? Hopefully. But it's that deliberate kind of snap, like something with two legs and no interest in hiding. You're following a pattern now, even if you didn't realize it at first. See, you're not the first person to walk this path and feel something shift behind your back. Over the past few decades, hikers, campers, even trained professionals have entered this part of the Black Forest and simply never come out. And it's not just random. No, it's way too specific. They tend to be men, usually between 20 and 40. Almost all were hiking alone. Most left notes or made last-minute calls saying they'd be back before dark. You'd think they'd all gotten lost or taken a wrong turn, but that doesn't explain the missing gear. Not just people, but their supplies, tents, clothing, sometimes entire backpacks gone, as if carefully plucked from reality. Take the case of Felix Baum, 27, amateur photographer, loved nature, mild caffeine addiction, so basically, you. In 1996, he took a short weekend trip into this very forest. He texted his girlfriend a photo of himself by a mossy ridge at around 3:12 p.m. The forest looked calm, peaceful, even. That was the last anyone heard from him. When search teams combed the area, they found only one thing: his phone. It was lying neatly on top of a flat rock screen, cracked, battery intact. No blood, no footprints, just one missed call from himself. That's the part that still gives people chills. A call log showed he'd dialed his own number at 3:18 p.m., 6 minutes after the photo. But experts later confirmed there was no signal in that area. Never had been. Historically, the region has had weird disappearances stretching back to the 1800s. One of the most documented early cases was in 1844, when a group of 4 woodcutters failed to return after a 3-day contract job. Their boss came looking and found only their tools stacked neatly against a tree. A single chicken bone was lying next to them, which seems harmless until you remember that none of the men brought food. It was the middle of winter. Local folklore took over from there. The woods were declared verflucht, cursed. Nearby townsfolk avoided the area entirely for almost 10 years. And when new workers were brought in during 1853, they refused to cut down a single tree in that region without being paid double and accompanied by clergy. Fun working conditions. But things got even stranger in the 20th century, especially after World War II. With soldiers returning home and reconstruction underway, the government opened large parts of the forest to public use again. Hikers came back, and slowly, the forest responded. In 1957, 2 brothers went missing during a mushroom gathering trip. Their bicycles were found chained to a signpost, untouched. Their baskets were halfway full. One even had a water bottle, still beating with condensation. Search dogs lost the scent after 20 meters. The only clue? A scarf folded and placed gently on a tree stump, as if offered. To this day, no one knows what happened to them. The forest didn't give them back. Scholars who've tried to explain these vanishings fall into 3 general camps. There are the pragmatist people who say it's simply vast, unregulated land, and hikers underestimate its dangers. Then you've got the skeptics who think these disappearances are exaggerated or misreported. And finally, the fringe theorists, the ones who believe the forest is hiding something. A predator, a portal, a phenomenon. One theory even suggests a rare magnetic anomaly under the forest floor messes with people's navigation instincts. That could explain the wrong turns, the sudden disorientation, but it doesn't explain the disappearances. If someone gets lost, you find them cold, hurt, scared, but findable, not erased. The most baffling part? There's no pattern in the environment. No ravines, no hidden rivers or cliffs. just trees, endless trees, and silence. There's a 1,981 case that really stumped investigators. A Dutch man named Leon Smit set out for a 3-day solo trek. He was a former military medic, trained in wilderness survival, and had GPS before most people knew what it was. He even checked in every morning using a satellite beacon. Until day 3. No check-in, no return. His campsite was discovered perfectly intact, fire still warm, tent zipped, extra socks rolled in pairs. One investigator remarked it looked like he'd stepped out to pee and forgot to come back. At the center of these vanishings is a quiet unease. No screaming, no signs of struggle, no blood trails, just vanishing. Back on your own trail, you stumble a little. Something crunches beneath your boot. A twig? No, something harder. You kneel down and brush away leaves to find a rusted old compass caked with dirt, but unmistakably out of place. The needle spins slowly. Not north, not anywhere really. You pocket it, though your hand itches when you do. Who dropped it? When? You glance behind you, expecting to see your trail, but it's gone. The trees have shuffled again. The undergrowth thickened. The forest does this, sometimes reshapes itself when you're not looking, or maybe it never looked the way you thought. You keep going, heart knocking a slow rhythm against your ribs, because you have to. Because you're not just walking through these woods, you're walking through every unsolved question they've swallowed. And so far, they're not talking. Your boots squish softly through moss and rotted leaves. The silence is almost polite now, like the forest is waiting to see what you'll do next. You're not sure if the air is colder or if it just feels heavier, like something invisible is coiling around your chest, asking you to breathe a little quieter. The trail narrows again, and that's when you see it. A faded trail marker nailed to a tree. The number 31 is etched into it, barely visible beneath cracked varnish. Just a number. No trail name, no direction. And yet, hikers familiar with this region know exactly what 31 means. It's where Stefan Meissner disappeared. Stefan was 22 years old in 1984, a police trainee from Munich, fresh out of academy prep, with a buzz cut so sharp it could slice bread. He wasn't reckless, and he certainly wasn't naive. He'd come out here alone, hoping to log some solo miles as part of his endurance training. A local lodge owner saw him head into the forest around 10 a.m., carrying a map, a compass, and 2 sandwiches wrapped in foil. He never came back. 3 days later, a search party found something unusual. Stefan's notebook, propped open against a rock. The last page was smeared with rain but still legible. It read, "Voices, not sure if they're mine, feels like the trees are circling." That phrase alone would have earned Stefan a chapter in any true crime blog. But there's more. The rock the notebook was resting on? It was warm. In November. No fire nearby, no sunbeam hitting it. Just warm. And when the team tried to collect it, it wouldn't budge, as if rooted into the ground or into something deeper. That find triggered one of the largest manhunts in post-war Baden-Württemberg. Hundreds of volunteers, dogs, drones, 1,980 helicopters, all combing the forest for any sign of Stefan. They found none, not even broken branches. But the weirdest part? In a different section of the forest, near marker 47, they did find something. A second notebook. It wasn't Stefan's. It was leather-bound, old, possibly from the 1940s, and filled with faded German script. Most of the writing was illegible, but one phrase appeared again and again. Stille jagt mich. The silence hunts me. So now you've got 2 different people, decades apart, possibly describing the same thing. Not an animal, not a man, but a presence, something tied to the forest itself. Investigators tried to dismiss it as coincidence, but when pressed, one senior officer said off the record, "I don't think Stefan was the first to write in that book." Still, no trace of Stefan, no body, no shoes, nothing. Which brings us to the odd details in the investigation. Every photo taken near the last known location came out warped, not corrupted, just off, like the trees had shifted slightly. Angles that didn't line up, patterns that shouldn't exist in natural forest growth. The forensic analyst who reviewed them was quoted in the official report saying, It's like the geometry of the place refused to be documented. It's also worth noting that Stefan had a fascination with Germanic folklore. His roommate said he'd been reading about the Waldschrat, a forest spirit known for leading travelers astray. Some stories paint it as mischievous, others as malevolent. It's described as half man, half moss, with eyes like tree knots and a voice like rustling leaves. Real chill guy. Now, historians still argue whether the Waldschrat was ever taken seriously or just a story to keep kids from wandering. But here's the thing. Its origin myths come specifically from this region. And if Stefan was reading about it just before his trip, well, that's a layer of irony no one's quite comfortable with. The story faded from headlines within a month. Police listed the case as open, presumed fatal. His family held a memorial without a body, and eventually people stopped asking questions, because forests like this rely on time. They know how to wait. But here's something most articles leave out. Exactly 1 year later, on the anniversary of Stefan's disappearance, another hiker claimed to hear someone calling for help near marker 31. The voice reportedly repeated the phrase, "Ich bin here. I'm here." The hiker swore it was a man's voice, distant but distinct. When asked why he didn't investigate further, he replied, "I didn't want to be next. Can't really blame him. Now you're walking past that very spot." The wind rattles the trees overhead, making the branches clack together like dry bones. You shine your flashlight into the undergrowth and catch a glimpse of something white paper. You approach, slow, heart-thudding. But it's not paper. It's fungus, pale, delicate, shaped like a small hand with too many fingers. Lovely. There's a chill in your bones now. And it's not just the air. Something's building. That sense that you've crossed a threshold, an invisible boundary you didn't mean to find. You check your compass again. Still spinning. North doesn't exist here. Only forward. And forward is where Stefan walked before he disappeared, notebook and all. So you keep walking too, like he did. Like they all did. Like maybe the forest is letting you for now. But don't get cocky. You're only in section 3. The ground rises gently, but every step feels heavier. Like gravity here is just more committed. You stop for a moment, letting your breath even out, and notice something odd. Your footprints. Or rather, the lack of them. The forest floor is soft, mulchy, damp. You should be leaving deep impressions. But when you glance behind you, there's barely a dent in the soil. Which brings us to the boot prints. They started showing up in 1993. A park ranger named Lars Kruger first reported them deep, solitary footprints appearing in closed-off forest zones. These weren't on any marked trails, and more importantly, they matched no known boots used by local authorities or hikers. The soles were patterned with thick diagonal slashes like something military grade but decades out of production. Kruger chalked it up to rogue survivalists at first, people testing their endurance or maybe trying to live off-grid. But then he started noticing a pattern. The prints always followed a straight line. Never a meandering trail, never doubling back, and always disappearing mid-stride, just gone, as if the person had taken a step into thin air. A few weeks later, Kruger disappeared. No warning, no signs of struggle. His truck was found parked at a ranger checkpoint, engine still warm, and just 30 meters into the tree line, one thing was found. A perfect set of boot prints, diagonal slashes, 12 in total, then nothing. The following year, more reports came in, hikers spotting similar prints in remote areas, always leading deeper into the woods. Some tried to follow them. One of those was a man named Jonas Menzel, an amateur cryptologist who believed the pattern might be a kind of code. He recorded over 100 instances of the same footprint type across multiple forest zones. His conclusion? The prints weren't random. They formed a grid, a literal grid, lines connecting from site to site, forming large, angular shapes that seemed to stretch across kilometers of dense forest. Menzel believed someone, or something, was walking the forest in a calculated pattern. A patrol route, maybe, or a containment grid. The question was, containing what? Menzel submitted his findings to a local university, hoping for some academic interest. Instead, he received a politely worded "no thanks" and a quiet warning from a former forestry official. Leave it alone. The forest isn't your puzzle. He didn't listen. A few months later, his blog went dark. His last post simply read, "They weren't prints, they were invitations." That was in 2001. No one's heard from him since. So yeah, those boot prints? They're part of the forest language now. Not just clues, but sentences. And you're standing in one. Ahead of you, the path dips into a hollow. There, under a moss-covered log, is something unmistakable. Another boot print. Diagonal slashes. The earth around it seems untouched. No drag marks, no scuffs, no sign of anyone ever arriving or leaving. You crouch, run your fingers lightly over the pattern. It's fresh, damp. Whatever or whoever left this mark was here recently. You stand and take a few steps forward, heart beginning to thump with a new rhythm. Not panic exactly. Something more primitive. You're not lost, but you're definitely not found. You remember reading somewhere that animals follow invisible paths, routes passed down generation to generation, encoded in instinct. Wolves, deer, even ants. Maybe people do too. Maybe we walk patterns we don't realize, drawn to places our ancestors feared and avoided for reasons we've long forgotten. Historians still argue whether certain European forests were deliberately avoided in early settlement maps, not because of terrain, but because of superstition. One medieval chart even labeled parts of this region land unseeable. Some believe that wasn't just poetic. Maybe there were zones where even mapmakers got spooked. Back in modern times, the 2015 investigation into the forest disappearances tried to revisit the bootprint theory. They even brought in a forensic podiatrist, which is apparently a real thing. She confirmed that the impressions were from a left and right foot. No duplicates, no looping tread. Someone or multiple someones was walking this place in silence, over years, decades. But here's the part they couldn't explain. The stride length never changed. No matter the slope, no matter the terrain, the distance between steps remained eerily consistent. 39 inches, every single time. Like whoever left them wasn't adjusting to the land. Like they weren't quite walking the way humans do. And if you think that's unsettling, wait until you hear this. In 2018, a drone operator surveying the forest for environmental damage spotted a strange outline beneath the trees. It looked like a massive boot print. Not human-sized, not even bear-sized. We're talking meters across, almost like a shallow basin in the shape of a treaded foot. Authorities said it was a trick of the light, shadow, and erosion. But the footage? It got mysteriously scrubbed. Forums hosting it were DMCA'd. The operator's account was deleted. When asked, he simply said, "I don't want to talk about the forest anymore." Now your own steps feel smaller, don't they? You push forward, brushing through undergrowth that feels unusually stubborn, like it's resisting you. Something snaps behind you. You freeze. Wait. Nothing. Except, no, not nothing. There it is again, a soft rustle. Like leaves shifting without wind. You spin around, flashlight cutting through the dark. Trees, just trees. Still, unmoving but somehow closer. You keep walking, not because you're brave, not because you're curious, but because deep down, some part of you suspects that if you stop now, you won't be able to move again. That whatever left those boot prints doesn't want to be followed, but also doesn't like being ignored. So you keep your eyes forward. You try not to think about the grid. You try not to think about the exact geometry of your path. You definitely don't think about the fact that your own steps might be falling into the same rhythm 39 inches, give or take. You just walk, and the forest listens. You duck under a low branch, its bark flaking off like dried skin. The air is damp, tinged with a smell you can't quite name, part rot, part ozone, like the moment before a lightning strike. There's a rhythm to the silence here, a pulse just under the quiet, and your footsteps keep falling between it like you're being measured. That's when you hear the voice. Just once, just a breath. Komm zurück. Come back. You freeze. Heart clanging. It's a woman's voice, soft, matter of fact, like she's calling you from the other room, not from the black throat of a forest. But there's no one there. The Black Forest has its share of legends, but none as persistent or as chilling as the tale of the woman in red. She appears in witness reports as early as 1911, when a cartographer sketching the foothills near Freiburg claimed to see a red-cloaked figure watching him from across a ravine. When he tried to approach, she was gone, but he later found her image, crudely etched into a tree near his camp. Head turned, no face, just a red shape. He quit his job within the year and never set foot in the forest again. The sightings come in waves. Always the same description. A woman, long hair, walking calmly just at the edge of vision. She doesn't run. She doesn't speak except, sometimes, that single phrase, "Come back." You inch forward, flashlight low. There are no footsteps ahead, but that doesn't mean anything anymore. Maybe she doesn't leave prints. Maybe she doesn't need to. The 1988 Henningsdorf disappearance involved her, too, or at least something shaped like her. Two hikers, Lars and Matthias, went out on a 4-day trip with audio recording equipment. They were making a short film about forest folklore, partly as a joke. On the third day, their campsite was found torn apart, nothing stolen, just scattered. The two men were never seen again, but the audio survived. It's hard to listen to, mostly birds, distant wind, tent zippers, but around the 46-minute mark of their last file, a voice cuts in. No context, no background noise, just one phrase, perfectly clear. Kamzaruk, same voice, same tone. The audio was examined by technicians in Berlin. The file had no signs of tampering. The voice wasn't Lars or Matthias. It was female, and, bizarrely, seemed to come from inside the microphone, as if it had never traveled through the air at all. One technician described it as impossible under normal physics. Historians still argue whether the woman in red is a metaphor, a shared hallucination, or an echo of some ancient archetype. Some link her to old Germanic myths about forest witches beings that didn't cast spells so much as rewrite the rules of time and memory. Others think she's a folk mutation of Red Riding Hood, except now she is the wolf. But the accounts persist. In 2005, a 12-year-old girl named Alina went missing while playing hide-and-seek during a family hike. She was gone for over 24 hours. When she was found, sitting calmly by a stream, she couldn't explain where she'd been. She just kept saying, "The lady told me stories, but she's gone now." When asked to describe the lady, she said, "Red coat. She doesn't blink." Back in your section of the woods, you pause at a clearing shaped almost too perfectly round. The undergrowth stops right at the edge, as if trimmed. At the center is a stump, hollowed out, rainwater pooled inside. On the bark is a red smear. Maybe paint, maybe something else. Either way, it drips slowly, fresh. You take one step forward. A branch snaps behind you loud, deliberate. You whirl around. Nothing. But the forest energy has shifted again. The pressure has returned. That soft, humming awareness. And maybe you just imagined it, but for a heartbeat, you swear you see a splash of red in the trees, a sliver of fabric, not moving, just waiting. It's easy to get spooked. Your brain's doing that thing where it fills in shadows with faces. You've seen too many horror movies. You've heard too many campfire tales. You know how this works. Except, of course, the forest doesn't work like stories. It's not about jump scares or monsters leaping out of bushes. It's about slowness, repetition, the same figure, seen again and again, always distant, never closer, but never farther either. That's how she works. The woman in red doesn't chase, she lingers. And sometimes, when people try to follow her, they don't come back. You remember the trail marker you saw earlier, number 31. Some claim that was her number, a clue, a calling card, that the forest uses her as a kind of lure, a test. If you follow, you fail. If you resist, maybe, just maybe, you earn passage. Theories, of course. But when the same woman has been reported in a dozen disappearances, across nearly a century, wearing the same clothes, speaking the same words, how long before theory becomes law? Another step forward. The wind gusts, and red leaves tumble past you like confetti. Except, it's summer. There shouldn't be red leaves. You look up. The trees above are green. You look back down. The red smear on the stump is gone. The clearing feels different now, brighter even. You squint and see that the undergrowth has parted on the far side. A path? A gap between trees that wasn't there before? Or maybe it was always there, and you just weren't meant to see it until now. You walk toward it. Because what else can you do? And far behind you, so faint you almost miss it, a whisper slides through the branches. Come back. You don't turn around, because you know that's when they get you, right? Not the ones who leap out screaming, but the ones who stand still. The ones who wait. The ones who whisper. You've seen enough movies to know that rule. But this isn't a movie. There's no background music to warn you when danger's close. Just your own breath. Just the trees. Just the long silence pressing down like a wool blanket over your ears. You step through the new gap in the underbrush, and the temperature shifts by a few degrees. Subtle, but real. The sunlight, if there ever was sunlight, goes murky. This isn't fog, not exactly. It's more like the forest's pulling its own shadow closer, folding it over you. Now you're on a new trail. Narrow, less traveled. The earth underfoot has patches of moss that squish softly under your boots, and something else, a scent, buried under pine and dirt. Metallic, faintly sweet, like rusted tools left in the rain. In the 1970s, an amateur botanist named Edgar Klein wandered into this part of the Black Forest during a solo expedition. His notes, meticulous and strange, describe the landscape in a way no other visitor ever has. He sketched warped tree roots that curled upward like hands, noted patches of vegetation growing in perfect concentric circles, and most interesting of all, documented a recurring sound. A low hum that seems to come from inside my skull, not my ears. Klein vanished in 1978. His notebook was recovered a year later in a sealed cave, alongside a pile of leaves formed into a near-perfect spiral. On the final page he had scrawled, "Not lost, just farther in." The path curves sharply now, dipping into a shallow gully. Water trickles nearby, thin and reedy. You lean closer and notice something odd. The water isn't flowing straight. It loops in a tiny whirlpool, as if trapped. Like the land is breathing, pulling it in, exhaling it back. Local legend calls this stretch of the forest Die Verdrette Otter, the twisted vein. Old maps refuse to show it, and even modern satellite images get glitchy around this zone. Historians still argue whether it's simply a trick of elevation or something else, maybe magnetic anomalies or underground quartz fields scrambling electronics. But hikers who pass through tend to report the same things: lost time, nausea, and recurring dreams of digging. In 1996, a small group of spelunkers got trapped in a sinkhole nearby. When rescuers finally reached them, 2 were unconscious. One was in shock, and the last kept saying, over and over, "There's a door under here. It just won't open yet." No one's ever found a door. But then, who's to say what qualifies as one? You reach a bend where the trees grow tightly together, forming what feels like a narrow corridor. The canopy closes overhead, turning everything a bruised green. You pause here, touching the bark beside you. It's warm, like skin warmed by the sun. But there is no sun. That's when you notice the marks. Scratches long and deep dragged into the bark in parallel lines. Not claw marks exactly. Not human, either. Something in between. Regular. Purposeful. Below them, a date carved in 23 Juni 1621, which makes no sense, because the tree is young, 50 years old at most. You glance around. Another tree. Another set of scratches. Same date. Was someone marking territory? Leaving breadcrumbs? Or is the forest playing tricks again? You step through the corridor and find yourself in what can only be described as a ruined clearing. Broken stones, half buried in ivy. The faint outline of something once built a square perimeter, maybe. Old foundation, maybe an inn, a chapel. There are no signs, no plaques, no markers, but you feel it in your gut. This place matters. Stories say this was once a sacred spot. Monks in the 1300s built a small chapel here, which burned to the ground under mysterious circumstances. No remains were found, but travelers passing through would sometimes see lights here at night. Pale blue flickers, floating just above the ground. One witness described them as ghostly fireflies with a purpose. Others believed they were soul lights, a German folk belief that the souls of the restless dead can glow when the air is still enough. Fringe researchers claim this area sits at a natural energy convergence point, a thin place, where the boundaries between dimensions are fragile. The kind of spot where people vanish not because they're taken, but because they fall sideways. You can't decide what's scarier, that idea, or the possibility that nothing supernatural is happening at all, and that people just disappear here because it's easy, because the forest has holes, because the map lies. You kneel beside one of the mossy stones and brush away some dirt. Your hand touches something flat, man-made. You pull it out slowly. A coin. German. Silver. Early 1600s. Fresh. No tarnish. It shouldn't be here. It shouldn't be this clean. And now your fingers tingle with pins and needles. And that pressure in your ears, the one that started back at the edge of the trail, gets worse. Like a storm's coming from inside your own skull. You rise quickly, scanning the trees. That's when you see it again. The red. Not a coat this time, just a sliver. A trailing ribbon, stuck to a thorn bush, fluttering slightly. It's the same shade you saw earlier, the one on the stump. The one that shouldn't have been there. But now it's here, like it's guiding you forward. You consider ignoring it, turning back. But of course, you won't. Not yet. You're too far in now. Just like Klein. Just like the monks. Just like the little girl by the stream. Not lost, you murmur under your breath, repeating the words you read. Just farther in, you step off the trail, deeper into the green hush. Behind you, the forest closes. The quiet isn't empty, it's layered. At first, all you hear is stillness, but then you notice the smaller things. The shift of a branch overhead, a soft pop like distant twigs breaking, and something far off, breathing, not heavy, not monstrous, just steady, rhythmic, almost like someone sleeping with their mouth open. You tell yourself it's wind filtering through the forest's narrow lungs, but you know wind doesn't pulse. The trail behind you is gone, no footprints, no broken branches. You spin in place, trying to triangulate your direction, but every way looks the same. Every tree holds its breath. You try marking your path a line in the dirt, a notch on bark, but when you look back a few minutes later, it's not there. You swear you made a mark. You watch yourself do it, but the forest disagrees. That's when the crunching starts. Not behind you, ahead. You freeze. Your heart's not beating any faster, it's beating quieter, like it's afraid of being overheard. The crunching stops. Then, a whisper. Just one word, maybe two. You can't catch the meaning. Could be German, could be older, could be something your brain doesn't want to translate. You keep walking, as if nothing happened. The light here is wrong. There's no direct source, just a dull gray ambient glow, like the world's been dimmed slightly in Photoshop. Your shadow appears faint and doubled, as if it doesn't trust itself anymore. The trees are spaced too evenly now, like they've been arranged, cultivated, like a cathedral without pews. And there, rising just ahead, are the stones. Not random ones like before, these are deliberate, carved. You recognize an old German style. Rounded tops, tall spines, deep inscriptions, tombstones, dozens of them, but no names, just dates, all between 1608 and 1623. And every single one is blank underneath. Local historians call this site Der Stummfriedhof, the silent graveyard. It's not on tourist maps, but it shows up in dusty civil records from a small village that no longer exists. The documents describe a place where victims of the Waldkrankheit, forest sickness, were buried. The cause of death was unclear. Symptoms included prolonged muteness, hallucinations, and in several cases, violent self-inflicted injuries, despite no sharp objects nearby. No grave robber ever touched the site, not out of respect, but fear. A 19th century priest attempted to consecrate the ground, only to collapse mid-prayer. Witnesses claimed he spoke backwards for several minutes before passing out. He survived, but never entered the woods again. You move through the tombstones carefully, trying not to disturb anything. One has a faint etching below the date. You crouch. It's not German, not Latin, just a symbol, a spiral intersected by a jagged line, like a target, cracked. You take out your phone, finally half expecting no signal. But oddly, you've got 1 bar. Enough for GPS? You open the map app, and you freeze. The dot is there. That blue, "you are here" dot. It hovers not over the forest, but in the middle of a lake. You zoom out. Lake Constance. That's not possible. That's hours away. You haven't moved that far. You can still smell pine, feel the forest floor beneath you. Your phone flickers. The signal vanishes. And then, a notification ping. No banner. Just the sound. Except your phone's on silent. You're sure of it. You always mute it in the woods. Now the screen's black. Won't respond. And the battery says 99%, just like it did 3 hours ago. Time, it seems, is unraveling. You stand and hear it again. That breathing. Louder now. Closer. Wet. And beneath it, voices. More than one. They're not talking to you. They're talking through you. As if you're a window. You walk faster through the tombstones until you reach the far edge of the graveyard. And that's where you see it. A tree, not like the others. Dead, white, smooth as bone. Its roots twist up above the soil, forming a cradle around something dark and round. You approach, slowly, cautiously. It's a helmet, metal, ancient, cracked along the top, as if crushed from above. But it's resting perfectly between the roots, like it's been waiting, like it wants to be found. You kneel. The inside is scorched, not burned, melted. You remember something from earlier, a tidbit buried in one of the old reports. In 1948, during post-war cleanup, a local farmer discovered fragments of what he believed to be medieval armor deep in the Black Forest. It was turned over to the police, then disappeared from records entirely. Some say it was forged. Others believe it was covered up due to what was inside. A fragment of jawbone embedded in the helmet's lining with modern dental work. Historians still argue whether the find was a hoax, a fluke, or something much stranger. How does a 20th century jawbone end up in a 400-year-old helmet? And why did the helmet itself test as pre-industrial alloy? You pull back from the tree, heart thudding. Something about this place is folded, like layers of time are overlapping. You glance behind you expecting to see the graveyard again, but it's gone. Just trees. The light dims further, and now the breathing stops. Not because it's left, because it's listening. Then, without warning, you hear a sound so startlingly normal it almost breaks you. A click. Your phone screen lights up. A single message. No sender, just text. We buried them for a reason. You close the screen. Your hands are shaking, but you keep walking. Because of course you do. Because the forest isn't done with you yet. You don't remember when the trees started changing again. You're not even sure they are changing, just that every few minutes, your surroundings feel a little less like the place you were just in. The trunks grow smoother, paler. Some bend at odd angles, bowing over the trail like silent witnesses. Others lean together in unnatural patterns, branches interlocked like they're whispering secrets you weren't meant to overhear. Then you smell it. Charcoal. Wet ash. The sharp sting of something long burned out but still smoldering under the skin of the earth. You pause and crouch, running your fingers over the soil. It comes away blackened and hot. There's no smoke, no embers, no fire anywhere in sight. But the ground feels like it's remembering one. A single crow calls from above, hoarse, ragged. Not the call you're used to. This one sounds like it's mimicking a scream it heard once and never forgot. When you rise, the clearing is waiting. It doesn't announce itself, it just arrives. The trees recede like a curtain drawn back. The air is flatter here, heavier. And in the middle of it all sits the remains of something recent. A campsite, but not yours. 2 collapsed tents. A fire ring half buried in moss. Pots and pans rusted to near oblivion. What's strange isn't the gear itself, it's how still everything is. No sign of struggle, no animal interference, just abandonment. You move closer. One tent has a notebook inside, spiral-bound, faded from damp. You lift it gently, its pages sticking together. On the inside cover is a name, Clara Riedel, 1992. A light bulb flickers on in your memory. Clara Riedel, the Berlin grad student who vanished on a field study in the Black Forest. She and two classmates had set out to investigate what they called cultural trauma residues in the region: folklore, superstition, unexplained archaeological sites. Their last radio contact mentioned something about a stone that bleeds. They were never seen again. You flip through the notebook. Most of it is normal weather notes, sketches of plant species, a weird list of local dialects from villages that supposedly no longer exist. But near the end, the handwriting changes. Sloppier, spaced wider, less academic, more desperate. The man is still watching. I don't think he moves. I blink, and he's closer. Elena says we're not supposed to say his name, but I don't know his name. There's something under the hill. We heard it last night chanting. The forest is folding in. I don't mean that poetically. I mean the map doesn't work anymore. The final entry is scrawled vertically along the page's margin. We tried burying it, but the ground gave it back. You stand motionless, notebook still in hand, when you notice something behind the fire ring. Half buried under dry leaves is a metal canister, military grade. You unearth it. The seal is broken, but the inside is dry. Within it, 2 Polaroid photos and 1 strip of 8mm film. The photos are unnerving in their simplicity. The first shows Clara and her team, smiling by a small standing stone barely waist height, carved with the same spiral symbol you saw earlier. The second photo is harder to place. It's blurry. A dark vertical mass in the foreground, a figure in the distance. But there's something wrong with the figure's proportions. Arms too long, neck too thin. The face is scratched out, deliberately. You tilt the film strip toward the light. 5 frames. One appears to show fire. Another, what looks like a mass of writhing roots. In the final frame, something or someone is looking directly at the lens. Historians still argue whether the Riedel expedition ever made it past their first sight. Official rescue reports claim the team likely died from exposure, but no bodies were ever recovered. A private investigator hired by Clara's family tracked their route to an unmarked sector of forest, only to have his equipment fail and his guide vanish overnight. He returned to Berlin 3 days later, barefoot and covered in soil. He never spoke publicly again. You tuck the notebook and photos back into the canister and replace it where you found it. It doesn't feel right to take them. The moment you step away from the campsite, the wind shifts. Finally sound. But it's not natural wind. It hums, low and mechanical, like a distant turbine, except it's coming from beneath you. You press your ear to the ground. Nothing. Then a vibration. Small, rhythmic. You look up, and something's changed. The light, maybe? The trees seem farther apart. No, not that they're gone. Just vanished. You're standing on a wide, circular field of cracked stone. Moss grows in the fissures. In the center of the ring, a single stone pillar, about your height. The spiral symbol again, only this one, pulses, like it's breathing. You don't touch it, you don't move, because you remember the note. We tried burying it, and something inside you understands. This isn't just folklore. It isn't a ghost story or campfire myth. Whatever this symbol represents, whatever was buried here, was meant to stay buried. The forest isn't haunted, it's guarding something. You back away, slow, careful steps. A sudden gust tears through the field, and you hear it again faint, almost swallowed by the wind. Your name, spoken like it was always known. Not shouted, not whispered, remembered. You turn and walk away. You don't run. Not here. Because now, for the first time, the forest knows you. You keep walking, not because you know where you're going, let's be clear. You don't. But because standing still feels like an invitation. And tonight, you're not interested in accepting any mysterious invitations whispered by old trees or breathing stones. The woods are quieter now. That unsettling quiet, not peaceful, watchful. The kind of silence that settles over a crowd right before something happens. The spiral is still dancing in the back of your mind. Not the symbol itself anymore, but the feeling it gave you. A low, pulsing awareness. You can't shake it. Can't quite tell if it's outside of you or slowly becoming part of you. Your feet crunch over gravel, no, not gravel. Stone again. Flat slabs. evenly spaced. A path, man-made, or something made. You follow it. Soon, you arrive at a wall. Not a building, not a ruin. A wall of blackened logs, each sharpened at the top, driven into the ground like a fortress fence. It curves around in a wide semicircle, disappearing into the fog on either side. Built for defense, or to keep something in. There's a narrow archway cut through the wall, and above it, scorched into one of the beams in old, fading Gothic script, is a phrase, "Hier wohnt der Flüsterknecht." Here lives the whisper servant. Oh, good. That's comforting. The name rings 0 bells in your memory. But that doesn't mean it doesn't belong to something real. Names in forests, especially ones carved into wood, tend to mean more than they seem. You step through the arch. Inside, ruins. Actual ruins this time. Half-collapsed huts, stone wells choked with moss, and a church bell, just the bell lying in the dirt. No building left to go with it. It's a village, or was, medieval, by the look of it. No birds, no wind, just the crack of twigs under your boots, and that strange, throbbing awareness in your gut again. You pass a structure that might have been a communal hall. What's left of the roof is caved in, leaving thick timbers and animal bones tangled like forgotten firewood. But just beyond it, behind a wall, you spot movement. Not a figure, a shadow, too fast to catch properly, but undeniably there. Moving from one side of the ruined church to the other, you freeze, breath caught in your throat. Nothing follows. Yet, you duck inside the old church shell. It smells like wax and iron. Inside is an altar crude. Cracked down the middle and scrawled across the back wall in charcoal are dozens of spiral marks. Some fresh, some smeared, like someone tried to wipe them off. One in particular draws your eye. Not because it's bigger or deeper, because it's pulsing. Same as the one in the stone ring. You take a cautious step back only to feel something crunch under your boot. A bone. Not animal. Human. A finger bone, to be specific. You look down. There are more. A whole hand. Then a second. Then a half-buried rib cage, stripped clean but placed deliberately in a circle. This wasn't an accident. This was a ritual. You're about to leave when you see it beneath the altar. A small chest, half sunk into the earth, its iron lock long rusted through. You lift the lid. Inside, a mask. Leather. Crude. A stitched smile and hollow black eyes. You touch it. And suddenly, the world slips. Not just the world. You. Your vision folds inward, like a curtain being drawn shut. The forest, the altar, the ruins, they all vanish, replaced by a memory that is not yours. A clearing, moonlight, chanting in a tongue you don't recognize, hooded figures surrounding a fire, and at the center of it all, a person wearing the mask, the whisper servant, not speaking, just standing, listening, and then, without warning, screaming. But the scream isn't human, it's deeper, layered, like 3 voices tearing out of the same throat. And around the edges of the clearing, trees bend inward, like they're trying to watch. Then you're back, gasping, knees in the dirt, mask still in your hand. Historians have long dismissed rumors of vanished forest cults in southern Germany as local folklore products of Catholic paranoia or medieval hysteria. But some records survive. Scattered mentions in church annals and witch trial transcripts. Descriptions of a sect who lived among the stones at sea and worshipped a figure called der Flüsterknecht, the whisper servant. Not a god, a guardian. Of what, the texts never say. But one particular account, translated from Latin, describes an entire village abandoning its parish after the kneeling bell rang without wind and a man in 2 shadows walked out of the forest. Sound familiar? You step outside again, ears ringing. That sensation returns the one you felt back in the field, like you're being watched, not from a direction, but from the inside out. And then, another whisper, not your name this time, a word, bleeb, stay. You bolt, back through the arch, past the stone path, into the deeper woods. You don't look behind you, not because you're brave, but because your body understands something your brain is still catching up to. If you look, it sees more of you. Branches slap your arms, roots strip your steps. The forest feels like it's trying to make you stay, but somehow, you burst into a new clearing. Fresh air, less dense trees, a breeze. Real bird song. You collapse near a stump, chest heaving, heart hammering. Something is shifting behind the world's wallpaper. You can feel it. Whatever is in this forest, it isn't dead. It isn't a relic. It knows. And worse, it remembers. And it has a name now. Yours. You don't move for a long time. The stump beneath you is damp, rotted at the corners, and the wind that's finally returned brushes across your neck like someone almost, but not quite touching you. You're breathing again, but not normally. Your lungs feel like they borrowed someone else's rhythm too deep, too slow, like you're sinking to a different heartbeat. And then, something breaks the spell. A sound. No whisper this time. Not a voice. Just laughter. But not close. Not far, either. Somewhere in between. Thin. Playful. The kind of laughter that comes just before the punchline of a joke you weren't invited to hear. It flickers through the trees and dies fast. Like whoever made it doesn't need you to follow it. They know you will anyway. You tell yourself not to go toward it. You go toward it. The forest here is different, less oppressive, but wrong, in a quieter way. The trees are younger, but twisted like they're trying to pull themselves out of the ground. Lichen grows in perfect lines. No leaves fall. No insects buzz. No birds flap out of your path. Every step feels like you're waking something up. And then you find it. A house. No, a cabin. Ancient, but intact. Entirely made of crooked stone and black timber, sitting crookedly at the base of a hill. One window, one door, both shut. Ivy climbs one side like it's trying to smother the whole place in silence. You approach slowly. On the door, a familiar symbol. The spiral. You'd think it would be worn down by now, but this one looks fresh, as if someone or something drew it with intention. Recently, you don't knock, because deep down you already know. If there's anything in there, it's expecting you. You open the door. Inside, the air is warm, not welcoming used. It smells like burnt cloves and something meatier, like stew left on a fire a century too long. There's only one room. In the center, a chair. And in that chair, a man, or what used to be one. Thin, unmoving, gray as the walls. Hands folded in his lap, eyes closed, head tilted slightly forward. You can't tell if he's asleep or if the world just forgot to finish him. And on the wall behind him, carved deeply into the wood, are dozens of names. Most are scratched out, but one, the last one, isn't. It's yours. You stare at it for a long time. And the longer you stare, the more your ears start to ring. No, not ring. Hiss. A constant, low-frequency hiss, like old radio static. You turn, slowly. The man is still, but the chair is now facing you, just slightly. You didn't hear it move. You didn't see it move, but it did. You back toward the door. Try the handle. Locked. Of course it is. You whirl back. And now the man's head is up, eyes still closed, but mouth smiling. Not a fresh smile, a stretched one, like the muscles forgot how to close. And then he speaks, but not in words, not even in whisper. A sound emerges from his mouth, a low, resonant hum that vibrates through your spine like someone dragging a cello bow across a coffin. The sound builds in your ears, in your teeth, in your bones. You black out. When you wake, the cabin is gone. You're lying in a patch of flattened grass. The hill remains, the trees remain, but the structure? Gone, like it was never there, not even an outline left behind. But something's changed. The forest doesn't feel like a maze anymore. It feels like it's behind you. You check your phone, not for reception. You gave up on that a while ago, but to check the time. It's 3:33 a.m. Of course it is. Historians might brush off certain patterns, triple digits, spiral symbols, old forest tales as coincidences, byproducts of confirmation bias, or human pattern recognition. But when you start seeing the same name pop up in regional German texts, family records, and even some failed psychological studies from the early 20th century, you stop calling it coincidence. Der Flüsterknecht. He was never central to any major story, never the villain, never the god, but always at the edge, always near things that disappeared, people, towns, languages. You think of the masked figure you saw in the vision, of the ruined church, of the circle of bones beneath the altar, and the bell, the one that rang on its own. You're walking again, without realizing it. The forest is thinner now. Trees give way to open dirt path. There's a scent in the air, wood smoke and damp stone. Civilization? Maybe. Or maybe just another trap. Eventually, you come upon a signpost. Actual wood. Fresh. It points left and right. One arrow says, Zaruk, back. The other, Bleeb, stay. The same word you heard whispered to you, twice now. You smile a little, not because it's funny, but because it's so absurd. Like the forest is giving you a choice, but deep down, you know it already knows what you're going to do. You go left. You always would have. And behind you, the trees begin to whisper again. Not in German, not in Latin, not in any language, just a noise. Wet, gurgling, ancient, like a voice made of soil and teeth. It says, welcome back. The path widens just slightly, but the trees no longer lean in. They simply observe. You can feel their gaze in the tension between branches, in the prickling behind your ears, in the way every breeze now sounds less like wind and more like a hissed secret. Your legs are sore. Not tired, just aware. Aware that they've been walking longer than a single night should allow. You check your phone again. Still 3:33 a.m. Of course, this part of the forest looks untouched by modernity. No plastic, no graffiti. Not even the crunch of tires or boot tracks. Only soft, mossy ground and the occasional half-buried relic. An old tin spoon, a rusted iron nail, a child's wooden toy with one eye carved off. You pick it up and instantly drop it, because it's warm and pulsing. You leave it where it lies. Further down the path, you reach something new. A fence, wooden, waist-high, wrapped in rusted barbed wire. On the other side, a crumbling stone foundation outlines what must have once been a house or a barn. Maybe. But it's the well at its center that draws your eyes. It's covered, sealed with a heavy wooden lid nailed shut and weighted with stones. You don't touch it, because every part of you remembers that story, the one whispered in half a dozen versions across southern Germany. Each one slightly different, but always circling back to the well that hums. According to legend, villagers once used it to draw water for livestock, until one night, the water turned black, and the livestock started screaming, not crying, screaming even when untouched. When the village priest tried to bless the well, he lost his voice, permanently. Others said he never had a voice to begin with. Historians claim no such village existed, that it's all folklore, that the screaming cattle of Unterberg was probably a misremembered plague tale or psychological mass event. Still, you don't lift the cover, but you listen, and yep, there it is, a hum. Soft, subsonic, like a cat's purr inside your skull. You back away slowly. Then, as you round the foundation's corner, you nearly step on it. A corpse. But not a human one. A deer. Or, it was a deer. Now, it's little more than ribs and fur, except there's no blood. None. The grass beneath it is clean. The bones are picked dry, but not cracked. And its antlers? Cut perfectly clean at the base, like someone or something took them for reasons. A symbol is carved into its flank. Not the spiral this time, but something new. A Triskelion, 3 curved arms radiating from a center point. A Celtic design, sometimes associated with rebirth, sometimes with endless cycles, sometimes with gods of chaos. Historians still argue whether the Triskelion ever had a unified meaning. It appears across cultures from Neolithic tombs in Ireland to pottery in Sicily, and even tribal flags in Japan. But always, it's on the edge of meaning, never in the center. You take a picture with your phone, or try to. The screen flickers, turns off, then turns back on to a different image. Not the deer. You. Asleep. In the forest. Camera angled down from above. You swipe. More photos. All of you. Different angles. Different nights. In some, your eyes are open. You drop the phone. Hard. The screen shatters. You don't pick it up. The path doesn't fork, but the terrain does, rising into a ridge on your right and falling into a shallow ravine on your left. You choose the high ground, not because it feels safer, it doesn't, but because at least it feels drier. As you climb, your foot hits something half buried in the dirt. A chain. Thick. Blackened with age. Running along the forest floor and vanishing into a mound of tangled roots. You follow it. 15 feet later, it ends at a stake. A metal collar is attached. Small. Child-sized. And inside it, a tooth. Human. You don't touch it. The collar is carved with two things. A spiral and a date. 1621. This isn't the first remnant you found from that year. It was whispered earlier in a bark carving, scratched into a stone you stepped on by accident. That number is following you. So you sit, you breathe, you try to remember what you know. The 30 Years' War was raging in 1621, one of Europe's bloodiest religious conflicts. Germany was fractured, villages burned, borders redrawn, populations decimated. Historians say over 8 million died across the continent, many from disease and famine. But there are also gaps. Vanished townships with no records. Hamlets that disappeared overnight. Some people believe the forest took them. You think back to that name, Der Flusternacht. The one in the books, the footnotes, the margins, always there, but never centered. A figure who didn't cause death, but collected it. Who whispered to the desperate and disappeared with the willing. You wonder if this is his forest, or if this forest is his body. The sun never rises, but something shifts. The color of the sky gets grayer. The wind returns, and a smell rides in on it, burnt paper and citrus. That can only mean one thing. Another church. You don't know how you know, you just do. The trees part again, and there it is, a ruin. Stone walls blackened by fire, a steeple collapsed in on itself. But the altar remains, or at least the space where it stood, surrounded by dozens of small wooden crosses, each carved with a name. Some are in Latin, some in German, some in no language you recognize. All are burned halfway through, except one. Yours. Again. And it's fresh. The wood hasn't even dried yet. You back away, but the church doesn't let you go. Not yet. A voice calls out. Not a whisper. A real one. Hoarse. Dry. Male. It says your name. Twice. Then, very clearly, come see what's left of you. You freeze. Not figuratively, you literally stop moving. Muscles clenched. Joints stiff. Like some unseen presence pressed pause on your nervous system. The voice echoes once more, lower this time, almost amused. Come on, it says, almost coaxing. You've come this far. You want to run, but your feet don't. They turn. Step by step, you re-enter the church ruins. The roof is long gone, open now to the sky, or whatever this endless gray has become. The air smells metallic, like pennies soaked in damp ash, and somewhere, faintly, you can hear organ music. Not beautiful, not even melodic, just slow, droning notes drawn out like breath in a hospital room. You find the source of the voice at the altar. Except, it's not a man. Not really. It's a figure in a robe. Long, shapeless, dark gray, with seams of copper thread. You can't see a face, only a shape where one should be. Blurred, like your eyes refuse to focus. But its hands are visible, pale, thin, unmoving. It holds out a book. You don't want to take it. You take it. The cover is made of something not quite leather. The texture's wrong. The pages don't flip. They peel. Like dried leaves. Inside, every single page bears the same thing. Your name. over and over, in different handwriting, different inks, different centuries. There's even one in pencil written in the exact blocky script you used in 3rd grade. You close the book gently, too gently maybe, because the figure nods, slowly, as if that was the right answer, and then it begins to vanish, not all at once, just unweaving. First the arms, then the torso, then the blurred face, until it's just a pair of footprints in the soot and an echo in the beams. Historians still debate the role of spirit scribes in rural German folklore. Some see them as metaphors for mental illness. Others link them to the Wiedergänger revenants who return not to harm but to document, to make a record. Of what? No one agrees. But you're starting to think, maybe you are the record. You leave the altar behind, but not the feeling. It follows you out of the ruin like mist trailing from your coat. Outside, the forest has shifted again. This time, you see something that shouldn't exist in these woods. Telephone poles. They're old splintered wood, ceramic insulators but still strung with wire. The lines sag low, disappearing into the trees ahead. You follow them. Why? Because even broken infrastructure feels like civilization. The wires lead you to a clearing, a small one. At its center is a hut. Not a cabin, not a cottage. A hut. Like something out of a Brothers Grimm fever dream. Built from uneven timber, roof lined with moss. Windows shuttered from the inside. A mailbox stands at the edge of the clearing. Bent, rusted, and again with your name carved across it. You don't open the mailbox. You do open the door. It creaks, of course. Of course it does. Inside is surprisingly clean. Sparse, but clean. A single chair, a stove, a small writing desk, a bedroll tucked neatly beneath a narrow window. You half expect a ghost to be sitting in the chair, sipping tea, ready to welcome you home. Instead, there's just a journal. You recognize it immediately. It's yours, the one you lost 3 years ago during that hiking trip. You flip it open. Same entries, same doodles in the margins, except now there are more. Pages you never wrote, entries dated after today. One of them describes this exact moment. You, standing in this hut, reading this page, trying not to look over your shoulder. You don't look. You slam the book shut, then look anyway. No one's there. But something's changed. The air smells like peppermint, and the stove is warm. You walk toward it. Inside, buried beneath old ashes, is a photograph. Black and white. A group of children standing in this exact hut, smiling, some with their arms around each other. You don't recognize them, except one, the smallest boy. His face is your face. You blink, and suddenly the photo's gone. The stove is cold, and outside the clearing has vanished. You're standing in snow now, fresh, untouched. Not even your own footprints remain. You glance up, no sky, just fog, thick, like poured milk. A single tree stands nearby, tall, dead, covered in carvings. One catches your eye, an old German phrase, Der Tod ruft leise. Death calls softly. You laugh. You're too tired not to. Then you cough, and something falls out of your mouth. It's a piece of paper. You unfold it. A drawing, crude, childlike. It's a map. You recognize the hut, the well, the ruins, the deer, the figure. And one last thing, circled in red. Final place. No name, just that. You feel the direction tug in your gut. Southward, maybe? East? It doesn't matter. You follow it. The forest doesn't fight you this time. It lets you go. The snow deepens, the fog thins, and then you see it. A staircase, stone, descending into the earth, ancient, covered in ivy, lit by torches that don't flicker. You stand at the top, breathing, listening, wondering. What is the final place? A chamber? A grave? A doorway? Or something even quieter? Whatever it is, it's yours now. You start walking down, and the forest exhales. The staircase spirals deeper than any natural cave should allow. You count at first 13 steps, then 20, then 47, and then the numbers start to dissolve in your mind like salt in warm water. The walls narrow, the torchlight doesn't dim, but it starts to shift colors, soft yellows turning to amber, then violet, then that same sickly green you remember from the cellar back near the root-covered hut. Down here, the air isn't stale, it's still. No movement, no draft. Like the world above has stopped existing. Or maybe you've stepped into a pocket outside time, stitched beneath Germany's myth-drenched soil. You reach a flat corridor, carved stone, about 6 feet wide, lined with reliefs. Each panel tells a story. You walk slowly, brushing your fingers across them, trying to make sense of the scenes. In the first, a deer-headed figure kneels before a fire. In the second, villagers in robes standing in a circle, arms raised to the moon. In the third, a man, gagged and blindfolded, placed into a coffin while still alive. And in the fourth, a boy, alone in a clearing, holding a lantern. Behind him, trees with eyes. Historians often dismiss these as ritualistic depictions tied to pre-Christian harvest rites, but others, especially in fringe circles, believe these were warnings. Visual records left behind not to teach, but to warn off. One researcher even coined the term folkloric containment architecture, meaning these carvings weren't there to impress pilgrims. They were there to keep people from going further. You, of course, go further. The hallway ends in a door. It's round, and it has no handle. You lean in, inspect the edges. There's no lock, no keyhole, not even hinges. But there's an indentation, palm-sized, human-shaped. Yeah, you know where this is going. You place your hand into it. The stone feels warm. Not just warm, pulsing, like something alive is behind it, pressing back. And then, the door opens. No sound, just a gentle, seamless shift. Beyond it, silence, and a garden. Well, it looks like a garden. Low stone walls, pathways winding through hedges, statues positioned at crossroads, half human, half animal. Some you recognize: wolves, stags, owls. Others are unfamiliar, things with long curling necks and too many joints. You step in, and the door vanishes behind you. Of course it does. You're committed now. You follow the path. It loops like a spiral, curving always inward. And then, in the center, you find a bench. Someone is sitting on it. It's you, not metaphorically. You, as a child, maybe 8 years old, shoelaces untied, jacket too big, that same crooked tooth you hated in school photos. The child you looks up, smiles, then pats the bench beside them. You sit. Of course you do. There's no conversation, not in words, but the feeling is there, a kind of mutual understanding, like you've been waiting for this meeting your whole life, and now that it's here, you're not afraid. Child you hands you something, a marble, green, swirled with gold, the kind you used to collect. You close your hand around it. The bench is empty. Again, you stand, unsure if you should be mourning or relieved. And that's when you hear the chanting. Low, rhythmic. It's not coming from outside. It's inside your chest. The vibration travels up your spine, into your jaw, behind your eyes. And then, very gently, your feet lift off the ground. Just an inch. You're hovering. The garden dissolves, and you're floating through a tunnel. Light pours around you in slow spirals. A face flashes past a woman's, mouth stitched shut with gold wire. Then another, a man whose eyes are crows. Then another, a child made of ash. Each one whispering in a language you almost understand. You drift for what feels like hours, days, or 5 seconds, and land in a room, stone again. But this one is filled with objects, stacks of books, framed photos, keys, bottles, old phones, typewriters, rusted helmets, dolls, and in the middle, a table with a typewriter. On the page, this is where it ends. You move to tear the page out, but your hands won't obey. Instead, they type, by themselves. Letter by letter, they write your name. Then today's date. Then, witness authenticated, memory archived. The typewriter dings, and the room goes dark. Historians still argue whether places like this exist in literal form or only in the psychic architecture of trauma and mythology. Carl Jung would have a field day, you think. So would that folklorist who vanished in the Black Forest in 1928 and whose last letter simply read, "They know I see them." You close your eyes. When you open them again, you're back in the woods. It's morning. Real morning. Birdsong. Sunlight. Dirt beneath your fingernails. Your phone buzzes in your pocket. A text. No contact name. Just the words. Final place confirmed. Well done. You stare at the screen until it fades. Then, for reasons you can't explain, you smile. You stand. And for the first time in hours or centuries, you know exactly which direction leads home. You follow the trail with quiet confidence, even though nothing looks familiar. The forest doesn't look like the one you entered yesterday. Not exactly. The bark is lighter, for one. The canopy seems lower. There are more mushrooms, clusters of them, blue and ivory, curling up like tiny parasols. And the bird song, it isn't quite right. Less chirping, more rhythm, like someone left a wind chime hanging inside a cathedral. But your legs move like they remember something your mind doesn't. And that's enough. A mile in, you reach a clearing. Not the clearing, the one where the murder supposedly happened. This one is smaller, framed by bent birch trees and crowned with moss-covered stones. At the center is a shallow pool, ringed by footprints. Not fresh, not old either. Boot prints, bare feet, hooves. One set looks like yours. You crouch and touch the edge of the water. It's still, but as soon as your finger brushes the surface, it ripples into an image. A village, half-timbered houses, a church steeple, smoke curling from chimneys, children running in the snow. Then it flickers. The same village, but silent. Windows boarded. Ash smeared on the doors. No people, just a single red coat nailed to a tree. And just like that, the water stills again. You blink, but the vision doesn't come back. This is where historians begin their real arguments. Some claim that certain places in Germany's ancient forests retain emotional residue, memories trapped in the land like grooves on a record. The forest plays them back, over and over, for those sensitive or unlucky enough to tune in. Others say it's simpler. That trauma marks the land, and the land marks back. You stand and keep walking. A figure appears ahead, tall, robed, antlers sprouting from a skull-like mask. Your pulse quickens, but the figure doesn't move, just waits. You approach slowly. Every step sounds louder than it should. Too sharp, too final. The figure raises a hand, points behind you. You turn. There's nothing there. When you look back, the figure is gone, but something else has appeared in its place. A notebook. Open, spine cracked. The page is filled with handwriting that looks oddly familiar. You flip to the last page. It's a journal entry, dated 20 years ago. Your name is on the top. The entry reads, "The others think I left. That I escaped. But I didn't. I remembered. That's how you leave. Not by running, by remembering. If you've found this, you're almost done. One more place." You read it again and again. Somewhere deep in your memory, something shifts, like a box being unlocked. A name, Wolfsbach. You don't know why it matters, but it does. You know you've heard it before. You pull out your phone, check the map. There it is, less than a kilometer away. You start walking. As you do, the trees begin to thin. The ground rises slightly, and soon, you're standing at the top of a hill, looking down into a sunken basin of stone and ivy. And there, exactly where your memory told you it would be, is Wolfsbach. But it isn't marked on any map, and there's no road leading in, just one narrow, moss-covered stair carved into the slope. You descend. The air grows heavier with each step. Wolfsbach is more ruins than village. Collapsed roofs, shattered windows, ivy crawling through doorways like curious cats. You walk slowly, peeking into the remnants of a bakery, a schoolhouse, a chapel with no cross. The town feels preserved, not abandoned, like it's sleeping, and you uninvited are the nightmare it's waiting to forget. You reach the center square. There's a circle of stones, like a sundial, but with no gnomon. In the middle, someone has etched a spiral. It looks fresh. Your eyes follow it instinctively, and your head starts to hurt. A deep throb behind your eyes. You close them, and when you open them, it's night. No transition, no sunset, just instant darkness. The square is full now, not with people, with echoes, outlines of figures, transparent, flickering. They walk the paths of memory. A woman carries a pail to a well that no longer exists. A child runs after a ball that rolls into nothing. A man raises a lantern and vanishes. You don't move, because you realize they don't see you. You're not here, not entirely. You're watching a memory unfold. Or maybe you're becoming part of it. Because in the corner of your eye, another figure appears. Not an echo, solid, real. Wearing a red coat, the same red coat nailed to the tree. You try to speak, but your voice is gone. You try to step back, but your legs are rooted. The figure raises one hand, a slow, deliberate wave, then reaches into its coat and pulls out a marble, green, with a gold swirl. The same one the child you gave you in the garden, the one you left behind. The figure drops it, and it rolls to your feet. You reach down, and as your fingers close around it, everything blinks out. Silence, then a voice, clear and close. You remembered. And for the first time, you know what it means. You open your eyes, and it's morning. Not just any morning, a normal one. Light filters through the trees in soft beams. You're lying at the edge of the forest, on dry leaves, just outside what looks like a forgotten trailhead. Your phone buzzes, full battery, time and date synced. No missed calls, no strange photos. The map app works again. And you're not far from the nearest village. A real one this time, marked on every map, with a bakery, cars, and people who wear raincoats instead of cloaks. You get up slowly. Your clothes are damp, but intact. No signs of a struggle. No bruises. Just a faint dirt smudge on your palm, and in it, something small and round. The marble. Still green, still swirling with gold. Your fingers close around it instinctively. You don't remember picking it up, but it's yours now. You feel that much. You walk toward the village, unsure if you should ask for help or a coffee. When the woman at the bakery greets you, you ask a simple question. Do you know where Wolfsbach is? Her expression doesn't change, but the man behind the counter looks up sharply. Wolfsbach? He repeats. Where'd you hear that name? You shrug. Just something I read. He pauses. Old ghost town, fires and floods. Back in the 50s, I think. No one goes near it anymore. You nod like it means nothing, like it didn't reach into your mind and spin a story out of your own childhood. You ask for a coffee to go. The woman adds a pastry on the house. Says you look like you've had a long night, and you have, but more importantly, you remember it. Back on the train ride out of the region, you glance out the window. The trees blur past like a painting. You feel different now, not haunted, not cursed, just aware. Like you've been carrying a memory that finally aligned with something larger than yourself. You open your notes app and type, Wolfsbach isn't a place, it's a test. You pause, then add, if you forget, you stay. If you remember, you leave. Simple enough, unless, of course, there's another test after that. You close the app, tuck the marble into your pocket. The sun is warm through the glass. The train hums softly beneath you. You rest your head against the seat and close your eyes, not because you're afraid, but because now, finally, you feel safe enough to sleep. And maybe that's what all this was about. Not terror, not punishment, just memory, the oldest kind. Buried so deep, it echoes through the trees and the soil and the slow, patient growth of moss-covered stones. You think about that clearing again, the one with the pool, how still it was, how effortlessly it reflected back the things you forgot you'd seen. Places like that don't exist to scare you. They exist to remind you, not of danger but of presence, of time, of the way your steps leave marks, whether or not anyone follows. You breathe deeply. The hum of the train fades into the background, replaced by the gentle thrum of wind in branches, the low call of doves, the soft crunch of forest floor beneath your boots. And with each sound, your muscles ease, your thoughts quiet. The marble grows warm in your hand, not burning, not magical, just warm, like it's been resting in your palm forever. You let your mind drift not backward, not forward, just here, in this stillness, where shadows stretch long but gentle, where echoes don't chase you, they walk beside you, where remembering is enough, and finally, you sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.